Welcome back, everybody. It's time now for Kara's Cures. You know, so many kids are struggling with their mental health, and we often think about getting a therapist for our child. But what about counseling for the parents so you know how to better respond to your kids?
Yeah, parent counseling is actually the first line of defense recommended by the CDC for ADHD and other mental health concerns and the American Academy of Pediatrics. So what exactly is it? Joining us now is Dan Weiner. He's a psychotherapist, also co-founder of the Family Resource and Development Center in Farmington, with decades and decades of experience of counseling kids and their parents. Welcome, Dan. You're always one of the people I would call if I really need an answer to something, so I'm so happy you're here.
I appreciate it. It's nice to join you guys. Thanks.
You know what I always say, I don't have kids, but somebody told me once, because I had pets, they said, if you want to train a dog, train the owner. Don't train the dog, but train the owner. Is this the same with kids?
Yeah, I mean, to a large extent, because really, you know, nobody goes into parenting knowing exactly what they're supposed to do. So it does take a lot of time and a lot of energy. And sometimes when we go with our gut instinct, it may not always be the best way to go. So kind of parenting in effective ways through sometimes having good, healthy strategies can be a really useful approach.
Right. I mean, so often we're thinking like, oh gosh, my kid needs therapy and I'll just send them off. And what I've learned from you is that doesn't necessarily work. We have to get on the same page, and you really help us with some science-backed strategies with our kids, right? So like, what does parent counseling look like?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's so many different forms of it. It can take a different appearance. Some are very formalized and they're actual techniques. Some are specific to behavioral issues. Some are specific to raising a child with anxiety. So there's different techniques to learn depending on what you're trying to target. So if your child is struggling with mental health issues, it's really good to go into that situation thinking that you have some learning to do too. And how am I supposed to best approach my child based on that? But there are different degrees, different levels of approaches that we can take. And I think ultimately, parents can do a lot in terms of helping their kids make gains with their mental health issues.
Yeah, and I make another reference. I know AA, you know, they have support groups for the alcoholics, but they have, even if the alcoholic won't go to the support group, they encourage the family members to go because they can actually help treat the person, or as best they can to counsel the person to get some help.
Yeah, I think some of it is just it's hard being a parent, right? It's not an easy job, and I think parents are scared. Parents feel like they often don't know what they're doing. So it's not I don't think it's a stretch for a lot of parents to want to have somebody to work with around how they're approaching their child. But you're absolutely right. There has to be parent support. We run parent support groups through our practice periodically, depending on what the focus is. It's a really big element to making gains and helping your child feel better.
And even getting a parent strategy where you're on the same team. Like, what happens if one of you tends to be a little less strict, the other one believes you do it this way? Like, what if the two parents aren't on the same page?
Yeah.
Well, I think first off, they need a forum to talk about that, right? It's not in their bedroom at 10 o'clock at night arguing about how the day went. There really should be a setting where it's safe to talk about the different opinions that they have. And both are valid, you know, but I don't know that they're going to get very far if they're not working together. So usually there's some form of collaborating that goes on, but in order for that to happen, they need to understand why they need to approach it differently. And I think that's where we come in terms of the parent work.
And Dan, is it a large time commitment or is it an ongoing time commitment? How does it work?
That's a great question. It varies, Scott. You know, it could be, you know, if I see a child for an initial session, I may decide like we're going to target the parent work first, and we may do 4 or 5 sessions and then sort of make a shift. It could really vary. It could be parenting work is once a month. Sometimes I could be, or somebody else could be working with the child, and a different therapist could be working with the parent. So it's just critical that they have their own space to do that work.
Yeah.
And really it goes case by case.
All right.
I've learned so much, and I know you have so many resources for folks, and you're local. Dan, we're going to take a deeper dive on the Cares Cures podcast. I also have a special report coming up where we talk to a mom that you really helped, but you can actually reach the Family Resource and Development Center in Farmington that Dan co-founded. The website is frdcllc.com. There's resources on there as well, but we're going to take a deeper dive into some strategies that really help kids on the Cares Cures podcast, and watch for my special report Thursday at 5 p.m. on Eyewitness News.
Thanks, Dan. We so appreciate your time.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you.
All right, still ahead on this Monday afternoon.